Psychopaths regularly do bad things to others, but feel fine and have no regrets. And in some ways, they just can't help it.
What they can do is they can mimic emotions, they can mimic a genuine interest in you, when in fact there's really no interest beyond the interest that a cat has in a mouse, right? Think of the poor mouse. The poor mouse is saying, why is the cat doing this? And the cat is saying, there's a mouse, and saying, I'm a cat and it's a mouse and I do what cats do. That's the psychopath.
But not all psychopaths do physical cruelty. I'm interested in the concept of the psychopath in a suit, the kind that doesn't fit the Hollywood stereotype of the sadistic serial killer, or the kidnapper torturer from the nightly news. Sam's never physically violent. He wears nice clothes, he's clever, and can be a lot of fun. So how could he possibly qualify as a psychopath?
They look the same, they may even appear to act the same as we do, but in the long term, what they have in mind is their own self-interest. I've used the term social predator, and I think that's probably appropriate.
Evolutionary psychologists first coined the term successful psychopath to describe the advantage that a lack of conscience gives someone in outmanoeuvring others in the human food chain.
The argument is if a psychopath milks other people of resources, whether it's money, property, whatever, they gain these resources, they become more attractive to other females, they attract females, they can reproduce more freely and easily. So the argument is, in a way, psychopaths are perfectly tuned machines, that the engine isn't broken at all. It's a Rolls-Royce of the evolutionary cheating strategy game, and that they play the game to the full.
Research by Australian-born organisational psychologist Belinda Board has backed up this idea. Board's 2005 study found a high degree of psychopathic traits amongst the UK's top-ranking business executives.
I think the reason, in all honesty, it got so much publicity was because there was a great caption for all the journos, which was, is your boss a psychopath?
Board compared personality disorder profiles amongst criminals, mental patients and business leaders. She found the CEOs were more histrionic than the other groups and just as narcissistic and compulsive. The bosses, it seems, just weren't as antisocial.
Personality disorders are not these discrete illnesses, if you will, inverted commas, discrete diseases, using that medical model where you either have it or you don't. Actually, these perhaps are just extensions of normal characteristics that each of us have, just in varying degrees.
If you're very bright, you know how to dress well, you have, say, the gift of gab, you're raised in an affluent family background, you don't go into the bank and rob it. You get in the bank, you become a director. I mean, if you're fairly attractive, that opens up all sorts of doors for you. If you're intelligent, even more doors. The combination of good looks, intelligence, and lack of conscience is deadly.
There have been very few studies into how and why so many women fall for the charms and wiles of psychopaths. Many partners stick it out for years, ending up emotionally and financially ruined. But in the research that has been done, there's one lure that comes up again and again. It's the gift of flowers. Lots and lots of flowers.
Only in the initial stages does the psychopath do big gestures. He's attracting the female. But then, once she is in the net, closure comes, and he closes. It's like a business deal very, very quickly. You see, it's all about exploiting the empathy. You could say that it was quite an intricate mating strategy. On the other hand, you could say that it was to get one foot in the camp and went in there to live a parasitic lifestyle and to exploit all the resources of the woman. But because she has high empathy, people with high empathy, they're very good at sharing resources.
For an academic, Christine Kirkman watches a lot of television. Whenever she can tune in, her life goes on hold for the long-running TV soap Coronation Street. It's a guilty pleasure that gave her one of her best research ideas. The character Deirdre Barlow was one woman who kept on falling for the wrong guy. It culminated in a storyline that left her behind bars, doing time for the man she loved. Kirkman thought there might be lots of other Deirdres out there watching the show.
There were a lot of women who had been traumatised in this same way, who had been duped by a man who was living a double life. It has been commented on in the academic literature that the only way to really access the psychopath is to be able to contact and interview people who had real life experiences of them.
Christine's chosen an intimate, out-of-the-way pub for her session with Lydia. The questionnaire she's asked Lydia to fill out about Sam has thrown up some interesting issues on both sides.
The second schedule was about the personality characteristics of, in this case, your husband, and this is what makes it unusual, because in actual fact, the women that we interviewed, none of them were with their partners. They had all separated from them. Mm-hmm. So maybe they were more bitter than what you are.
The P-scan devised by psychopathy pioneer Bob Hare is a rough screener for psychopathic traits. But Christine's twist is getting the women partners to fill out the forms in order to rate their problematic men.
I can't really be certain. I can't give you these answers as my final answers. So most of them are ones, for example.
But if I were to say that, for example, that he lies easily while looking you in the eye.
No, I can't say it as a sentence, he is a liar, because he isn't.
You say on here about the antisocial pursuit of power through being aggressive, or...
He is not physically aggressive.
But verbally he is.
But verbally he can be very aggressive. He prevails all the time. He doesn't listen to the other. He doesn't listen to me what I'm saying. There is no really conversation when he is in the mode of aggression or rage. In such situations, I get up and I go.
Does he make rules for you or punish you in any way if you don't stick to his rules?
I make rules to him.
I see.
I put rules. When I tell him, don't leave this towel here. Okay, he will not leave it then there, but the next time he will put it. So I make a rule. Now, rule 2515. Don't put your towel there.
She makes the rules and she sets the parameters. I would consider that saying to somebody, rule 2001, you do not put the towels in here, is, if not abusive, quite challenging.
Later in the day, Lydia fronts up for Christine Kirkman's verdict. Two strong results have come out of the morning session. One is that Lydia has plenty of potential to make a good victim.
In actual fact, your scorings on this particular schedule demonstrated that you were a person who had very high empathic tendency. It correlates with a lot of other things. High emotionality, kindness, cries easily at things that touch them. And in that region, you had a high score, and that was in line with the other ladies that we interviewed.
But Sam's psychopathy score, on Lydia's reckoning, is low.
In the interview, we looked at the schedule of abusive behaviours, things such as punishment, rules, humiliation, constant criticism, character assassination. Those abusive behaviours for yourself, the incidence of them was extremely low in comparison to the other ladies. It is one of those things that is quite impossible to interpret, is how much denial a person has. Does she see herself as being a victim? This is what is important. And she does not see herself as being a victim because she claims that he is the best person that she's ever met.
Scientists suspect that psychopaths are different in the way they experience fear, especially anticipation of fear. And fear is the key to empathy.
In order to understand that what the consequences of your doing for others are, you have to feel them yourself. So the beginning of empathy is always selfishness. So first of all, you have to understand what pain, infliction of pain and anticipation of pain means to you, and then you do the second step and anticipate what it is for others.
But this doesn't happen for psychopaths. When their brains are tested for this reaction, the entire fear circuit is silent. The idea of consequences just doesn't compute. Some have used the term cold emotion to describe how psychopaths know things in their head but never feel things in their guts.
In the psychopaths, it's like a person who never had a body. It's like a person who is just the head in the old sense. It's a person with a head, and it knows everything in the head, but it lacks the memory of the bodily changes, and it lacks the memory of that disgusting bias of a negative emotion.
The discussion about whether psychopaths are born bad or whether their environment creates their condition is still hotly contested. In some ways, the nature versus nurture debate is a chicken and egg argument, and there are those who believe psychopaths don't stand a chance.
I think psychopaths start off in life as damaged goods. They don't choose to be physically and sexually abused. They don't choose to have the negative genetic predisposition to a psychopathic personality. They, in a sense, are propelled by forces beyond their control into a psychopathic way of life. And in doing so, they also wreak havoc on everyone around them, and in turn perhaps give rise to the next generation of psychopaths, insofar as we believe that abuse and neglect early on in life is one of the risk factors for a psychopathic personality. So there's almost a cycle of psychopathy.
But others are just as adamant that there's nothing to prove psychopaths are slaves to their genes or their environment. In fact, they choose to do exactly as they please.
It's not uncommon for somebody, particularly psychopathic individuals, to claim that in their early childhood, youth and so forth, that there were some traumatic events that happened, and this helped to either trigger off their psychopathic behavior and make them into what they are right now. But the literature is not really supportive of that. Psychopaths come from a variety of backgrounds, good, in between, bad backgrounds, wonderful families, terrible families. It doesn't seem to make a heck of a lot of difference.
Scientists have long been interested in how it is that psychopaths seem to be able to successfully target the vulnerable person in the crowd. Recently, a Canadian psychopathy researcher devised a simple experiment to test how good psychopaths are at spotting a victim. Her curiosity came from a throwaway line from a famous serial killer.
I got this idea originally from a quote from Ted Bundy, who often is cited as being a psychopath. He said he could tell a victim by the tilt of her head as she walked. And that really struck me. I wondered, is that even possible?
Not surprisingly, it turns out that Ted Bundy was right. Angela Book chose a random sample of walkers, but included one person who had been the victim of a violent crime, a rape or serious mugging. It took the psychopaths only seconds to work out who was the odd one out.
In watching these 15-second clips, we asked people to decide whether or not this person would be victimizable in a mugging type scenario. So for people who scored higher on psychopathic traits that relate to manipulation and lack of empathy, they were more accurate in predicting who was a victim and who was not, just from watching the 15-second videos. So what you can see here is that her arms are not moving in synchrony with her legs, in fact. one side was, but the other side, in fact, was not. So that would be something that you wouldn't want to be doing if you didn't want to be seen as a victim. Anything out of the norm or that's not synchronous would be more likely to indicate vulnerability. And it is spooky, and I think what's going on is that they are social predators, and they're able to pick up on these cues because they've had practice. They seem to use it to their own advantage. So they would use it for victim selection.
Victims of psychopaths are generally left confused and broken after their encounter.
Most of the psychopaths will actually have the victims ended up by thinking that they're the problem. And one can bully, manipulate, and con them. And rather than responding by either leaving or fighting back, they often will take it and think that he's right. You know, everything he says is right. There's something wrong with me, and I deserve all of this. And it's pretty sad.
Something called projection is common. It's a little like the tactics of a religious cult leader.
Characteristic of the paranoid is projecting, which means attributing to others one's own nefarious, malicious motives. And that's what you're doing. You're the one who's hostile. You're the one who did something dishonest. You are not careful with your clothes, etc., etc., etc. It is a perfect representation of what occurs in many religious groups, in which the leaders, in a sense, understanding of your deficiencies, absolves you of your sins, so to speak. And that's part of his strategy.
The victims all have something in common, and that is that they're human. And everybody can be victimized. I have been victimized. I have been conned and manipulated by psychopaths, and I should know better, but how do you know?
I love you.
If we believe in the fundamental goodness of man, we're doomed.